telling of apples in the trees and cows in the barn. We would write them now from country more raw and more our own than any Cheryl or Cara could tell of. And though the new place we came to was hard, we had come to it exhilarated and hopeful, expecting roughness and finding it, when we arrived, more to our taste than all we had relinquished behind us. These were the things my parents had shed us of, shrugging up out of them like clothing grown too small around their shoulders. A house on southeast LA's Chester Street, tall and white from its days as a farmhouse, sitting on a double city lot with outbuildings, a playhouse, a garden, magnolias and roses and fenced-in grass. Blackberry vines I hunted through for ripeness, while Mom talked to a neighbor over the fence. Chinning bars hung from the trees where Leslie and I played, shouting our voices over car sounds on the boulevard 1 block over. A mortgage that Mom and Dad paid by having 1 or 2 jobs each, working different shifts when they could to save sending their children into the care of my grandmother. City people with good clothes and white teeth and deftly styled hair, smiling in church and mixing about afterward, speaking of dishwashers and diets and how to keep oil stains off the driveway. We were gone from these things long before we moved away, living our days through my father's Polish songs and my mother's spoken dreams, through stories Dad told at night of Europe, of the war, of times when people survived picking mushrooms and roasting whole pigs to render off the fat of them. He protected us children, in those early days, from the hard parts of war, referring instead to the land. He spoke his father's name, and those of his brothers, telling of the trees outside the prison camps, the berries growing at their feet, the times when, after escaping one camp or another, he and his brothers grabbed handfuls of these, filling their mouths and sucking their fingers clean. And the people there, he said, the people of the land. Far back in the woods, with no one but family nearby, a man might walk the yard in his underwear, just because he could. Through the stories, my mother, and then we all, had turned nostalgic for places we had never seen, countries full of trees and cold rivers and neighbors far apart. My father's privilege as an airline worker was to fly us low cost just about anywhere, and we went as often as we could, and as far. Dad showed us France and England, even Germany, visiting small villages there to give thanks to the 1 or 2 masters who had been kind to him, back when he had been a Polish boy prisoner on their farms. I played there on brick pavement, with children who spoke none of my language, but who could teach me their games just as well. My special friend in Germany was Heidi, a blonde child with a face like a heart, wearing pointed shoes and old jeans and a checked flannel shirt tucked in. She was the granddaughter of the man who had used Dad's brother, Pietrek, on his farm, the only man in the village, Dad told us later, who had not been a Nazi then. In the middle of hopscotch, Heidi would tell her friends to wait and pull me down the alley. "Come on," she said, for it seemed to me then that I understood her speech, and we went into a candy store with glass counters taller than I was, and lights shining down on licorice and hard candy and more chocolates than I had ever seen in my life. Heidi knew the shopkeeper there, standing in his thick white apron and belly, and she spoke to him, grabbing my arm and pointing to me, making the introductions. I held up a hand and waved, and Heidi flashed a hand toward the glass case. What did I want? She asked. I pointed out my choice, and the round man packed up a pile of chocolate discs with white sprinkles. And later, when I showed the bag to my father, he murmured, "Ah, bonbon, I remember." We sat on the bed and shared them, my father biting down and beginning a new story.